Next item on the agenda is item 9J. This is a resolution authorizing the interim manager to purchase information technology equipment and services not to exceed $65,000. We've asked Mark Walig, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Wallach, who is the Assistant Fire Chief of Estero Fire Rescue and is their IT guru. He has worked with us over the last few months on the needs. He has also worked and spoken with the village manager and gone over those situations with him too.
Good evening.
Mark?
Congratulations again. Besides that screen, I hope there's no soot on my face, but I was asked by Transition Committee to put together a basic package to start you guys up with, which was actually a little fun at the same time. Basically, what we had specified was a server that you
Mark,
could...
I think you need to talk into the mic.
A little bit more? How about that?
You have to stand aside.
Better now? Okay. Oh, it's right here. That makes sense. The equipment we purchased, or quoted you to purchase, is a server unit that you'd be able to house in our facility, put it on our network, and when I say our network, our cabling, it would be on your own network, your own switch. The software that's needed to run that is in the quote as well. Some of this is already in place for you, so you can begin to operate as soon as you desire with email, file server, record retention. All that is in place right now with some temporary licensing, which once you approve this, I'll work with your manager to finalize to help you out with. I can answer any questions. I don't know how specific you'd like to get.
Are there any questions from the council?
I just have a comment. I'd like to personally thank Mark and for working with us as part of the transition team. This is very complicated stuff that we're trying to create here, and it's all basically for one purpose, and that is to keep the records of the village of Estero as we go forward in a place that is both secure and private and is available to the public and the press, so that we can retrieve every piece of paper and everything will be done electronically by the council, so that their phones will be business phones owned by the village, and their computers will be business computers owned by the village that store all of the data on these servers, so that they are always open to the public via a record request, and that is what's required by the laws of the state of Florida, and we are trying as best we can to comply with those as quickly as we can, because up to this point, when council people are working from their personal phones and working on their personal computers, those records are much more difficult to retrieve. So we would like to start off our existence as a village in the right fashion and be able to comply completely with the laws of the state of Florida, and this will enable us to do so. I realize that $65,000 is a gulp for any of us just starting out in city municipal life, but I think this one is something that we need to do and need to do right now so that we can get things off on the right foot right away. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I talked with Mark yesterday about the compatibility of using Apple products with the server, and you said there's a compatibility that's fine, there's no issue with that.
From a technical standpoint, there's no issue with it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Are there any comments from the audience? No. All right, the recommendation that we have is a resolution authorizing the interim manager to purchase information technology equipment and services not to exceed $65,000 and authorizing the village mayor to execute those contracts. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Ribble?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have Mr. Leviton seconding it also. All those in favor, please signify by...
I'm sorry, Mayor. I have one more comment that I wanted to make that Mark neglected to tell us. And that is that all of the equipment, or the majority of the equipment, is being purchased through the Estero Fire and Rescue from vendors that have contracts with the state of Florida. They're on the approved state of Florida list, and they then enabled to buy at the prices that the state of Florida has negotiated for these, for this IT technology. And so I wanted to make certain that everybody understood that that is the reason why we did not go out for competitive bids on this. The state of Florida has already done that and gotten these prices listed. Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
We'll carry on. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And again, it carries unanimously. Mark, thank you very, very, very much. Chief, I want to thank you also. The chief has asked that the city council people contact him in the next day or so that they can get identification cards for entrance into the firehouse. Also, I saw a picture that came today that the village of Estero's name is already up on the glass doors going into the fire authority. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is item 9K. It's a discussion regarding directing the interim village manager to advertise an ordinance establishing the Planning and Zoning Board for the Design Review Board. Bert, do you have any additional information on that?
Yes, I think just real briefly, obviously, land planning and zoning and all of those types of land use issues are going to be very important for the future of the village. And so what this resolution simply accomplishes is directing your manager and the city attorney to begin the process of putting together the ordinances necessary to create your planning agency, your architectural design review boards. There's no substantive issues addressed in there. There will be some policy issues that we'll likely want to discuss with you at your workshop, perhaps on March 20th, but we want to get the process started. So that's the purpose of this. So we simply need a resolution directing staff to begin the process of putting together those organizations for you.
Are there any comments or questions from the council?
This is to facilitate starting the planning boards and zoning boards?
Yes, sir.
Design review?
Yes.
Literally staffing them with volunteers?
And there's nothing will be determined without fully vetting all of the issues with the village council.
Sure.
So this is just to get us started
Right,
in the
okay.
process.
Yes?
And I'd like to also comment that, and make the audience aware that in the temporary schedule that we have just set up, on March the 27th at 1:30 at the Estero Fire and Rescue will be a workshop dedicated solely to a discussion among the council of the land use boards and the other resolution with respect to that is on the next agenda, which is the so-called ex parte rule. So we will be discussing these in detail so that everybody on the council and the public will be aware of what the proposal is for the land use board and dealing with communications with developers during the process.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions from the council? Are there any questions or comments? Neil? Your
Yes,
name?
my name is Neil Natelick. Excuse me, Neil Natelick, and I am the emeritus chairman of the Estero Community Planning Panel. And I just want to bring to your attention, I know you're going to be dealing with this on a detailed basis as you come forward, but from my perspective, we've had 171 public meetings now reviewing zoning-related and other issues for Estero. We get lots of comments about the successes we've had relative to architectural standards, et cetera. And our subcommittee, the Estero Design Review Committee, has had about 160 meetings. public and has reviewed hundreds of projects, including signs, et cetera. So I would just ask you that between now and the time you seriously take this up, to recognize that this is a very important function relative to the future character of our community. And many of us have invested hours and hours and hours of time, and we're not going to stand by and see that go. Hopefully, we'll just continue on. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention, how strongly some of us feel about it, and I hope you'll deal with it accordingly. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, there's a recommendation on the floor to direct the interim village manager to advertise an ordinance establishing the Planning and Zoning Board and Design Review Boards at the earliest possible date. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Bosch. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 9L. It's a discussion regarding directing the interim village manager to advertise an ordinance, the provision of Section 286.0115 of Florida statutes, which removes the presumption of prejudice from ex parte communications with local public officials by establishing a process to disclose such communications. Bert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Section 2-191 of the Code of Ordinances for Lee County deals with what's referred to as unauthorized communications. And when the charter was adopted by the citizens voting in November, the charter approved bringing over from Lee County the ordinances from Lee County to apply to the village of Estero until changed by the village council. This particular section, and I want to read a couple parts of it because there's some things in here that make it very difficult, I believe, for a village council to operate in light of the fact that you don't have a large staff and, as they do in Lee County. But an unauthorized communication means communication in any form, whether written, verbal, or graphic, with a, in this case, they refer to a county commissioner, but I think the logical conclusion is that since you've adopted those ordinances in your charter, that it applies to the village council. Or county commissioner, executive assistant, by any person outside of a public hearing concerning substantive issues in any proposed, anticipated, or pending matter relating to appeals, rezonings, variances, or special exceptions, is a violation of the county ordinance and now the city ordinance. And the penalties are rather severe. There are criminal penalties as well as civil penalties. And the thought is that you're going to, as you proceed to deal with land use matters, you're going to want to have the ability to discuss those matters with members of the public as well as perhaps developers and other people involved in projects. This will permit you to do that. So the direction that we're suggesting is that you direct the manager and the attorney to prepare an ordinance that provides that you're able to have those types of communications. So that's the nature of this
Thank you,
suggestion.
Bert. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Are there any questions or comments from the audience? John?
Rich, I just, Bert, does this mean that the individual council members can have these discussions? Or does this mean that they have to be meeting
No,
under
this
the
would,
sunshine law?
yeah, no, this would mean that individual council members, if they have a communication with a member of the public, a developer, a property owner, they're permitted to have conversations concerning matters that may come before them, before the village council, dealing with land use matters.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Just Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on that, and as council has stated, the state of Florida legislature has enacted a statute that allows any of the cities and towns and villages of Florida to pass an ordinance allowing this kind of communication. And we would be following very specifically the language of the statute that allows municipalities to do this and to have communications with anybody in the public about a land development as long as those discussions and, for example, going out to visit the site are all disclosed at the public hearing by each council person specifically prior to the hearing or in the process of the hearing. And I think most of the cities and in Lee County have adopted this, if not all of them, have adopted this way of handling it. The county, for a variety of reasons, chose to prohibit all those discussions with the Board of County Commissioners. We don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, but we think that the Florida statute provision is the appropriate one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions, comments? There's a recommendation on the floor to direct the interim village manager to advertise an ordinance regarding section 286.0115 of the Florida statutes, which removes the presumption of prejudice from ex parte communications with local public officials by establishing a process to disclose such communications. Do I have a motion to move that?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Levitan.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ribble. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes unanimously, and thank you very much. The last item on our agenda is agenda item 9M, a resolution regarding directing the interim village manager to advertise an ordinance repealing Lee County Ordinance 03-14 relating to lobbyist activities and lobbyist reporting. Bert, can you give us an explanation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members. And I think the direction that you're going to want us to take is to deal with one small segment of that ordinance, not the entire ordinance. That lobbying ordinance requires registration of lobbyists, and there are many municipalities and counties that require lobbyist registration. There's nothing inherently wrong with that at all. That way, when somebody appears before you, you know that they're a paid lobbyist, and you keep those records. But there's one aspect of this, and it's in Section 3 of that ordinance, which is really what we're recommending that you rescind or repeal, and that is a record-keeping responsibility. So under that particular section, if someone calls you up on your city cell phone or on your personal home phone, or you see someone in the grocery store who happens to be a lobbyist, and the definition of lobbyist is very, very broad. It's someone who is paid or not paid who is trying to influence your decision-making. So that's just about everybody that you would talk to. You'd have to keep a record of that, and it's a fairly detailed record of that. Now, in Lee County, where they have this requirement, they have a full staff. So if someone calls a county commissioner, they have a receptionist or someone who can fill out those types of things. You're not going to have that capability, and I believe that this would be a very, very substantial trap that you would fall into, because someone would talk to you, you wouldn't keep a record of it, and then you would be in violation of the ordinance. And the violations of the ordinance are also rather severe, and so you don't want to have that responsibility. The penalties for an intentional violation of this ordinance are those as specified in Section 125.69, parentheses 1 Florida statutes, and those penalties can be very substantial. So this will give you the ability to talk to someone in the grocery store who happens to be a lobbyist and not have to worry about making a note and keeping a record of it. So just that one section that we're looking at.
Are there any other questions or comments? Are there any questions or comments on this item from the audience? Seeing none, there's a recommendation to direct the interim village manager to advertise an ordinance repealing Lee County Ordinance 03-14, Section 3, relating to the lobbyist activities and lobbying reporting. Do I have a motion of that sort?
So moved.
Moved by Katie Harrington, seconded
Second.
by Don Brown. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.